The man who became Hollywood's most unlikely action hero at 56 was once told he'd never make it in film. Behind every intense stare and gravelly threat lies a story of unimaginable loss that would have broken most men. This is the untold story of Liam Neeson, a tale not of revenge, but of survival. A journey from the violence-torn streets of Northern Ireland to the glittering heights of Hollywood, marked by tragedy so profound it redefined everything he thought he knew about love, loss, and living. By the end of this video, you'll never watch a Liam Neeson film the same way again, because the truth behind the man is more powerful than any script he's ever been handed. And the demons he faced off-screen make every villain he's fought look tame by comparison. Before the fame, before the fortune, before he became the man with a very particular set of skills, there was simply William John Neeson, a working-class Catholic boy born in Ballymena, Northern Ireland. But this wasn't just any childhood. This was a childhood lived in the shadow of the Troubles. At 9 years old, he walked to school past armed soldiers on street corners. Bombings weren't breaking news, they were part of daily life. Sectarian violence wasn't something he read about in history books, it was happening outside his window, in his streets, to people he knew. Growing up in a divided society where your religion could get you killed, where choosing the wrong street could be your last mistake, shaped something deep inside him. Something that would make him uniquely qualified to play survivors on screen, because he already was one. His father, Barney, worked as a school caretaker. His mother, Catherine, cooked to make ends meet. They weren't wealthy, they weren't connected. They were just trying to survive and raise their 4 children in a place where hope felt like a dangerous luxury. But Catherine saw something in her son, something different. While other boys dreamed of escaping through violence or alcohol, young Liam found his escape in stories. But here's the twist, most people never knew. Neeson's first passion wasn't acting, it was boxing. He trained as an amateur boxer, stepping into the ring, taking punches, learning to absorb pain, and keep standing. He was talented, genuinely talented. That discipline, that ability to take a hit and keep fighting would become the defining characteristic of his entire life. Not just in boxing rings, but in ways he couldn't yet imagine. At 11, a drama teacher noticed him. She saw past the tough exterior, past the boxer's stance, and recognized raw talent hiding beneath. She convinced him to audition for a school play. On that small stage in Northern Ireland, Liam Neeson discovered the one thing that would save him: the power of transformation. The ability to become someone else, to live different lives, to escape the limitations of his world. He joined the Lyric Players Theatre in Belfast at 17, earning barely enough to survive, sleeping on friends' couches, chasing a dream his family couldn't understand. In their world, acting wasn't a career, it was delusion. But Neeson had tasted something he couldn't let go of. He thought he had found his purpose. He had no idea. The real tests, the ones that would truly define him, were still decades away, waiting in the darkness. London, in the late 70s, Liam Neeson arrives with dreams as big as his 6'4" frame and a wallet as empty as his prospects. The reality of pursuing acting hits him like one of those punches he used to take in the ring. He works any job available: forklift operator, architect's assistant, truck driver, sleeping in hostels, barely scraping by, attending auditions that lead absolutely nowhere. Casting directors see the same thing every time. Too tall, too Irish, too intense, too different. He doesn't fit any of their carefully constructed molds. One director tells him his face is too rugged for leading roles, that he'll never be a romantic lead. Another says his Irish accent is too thick, too working class, too real. The message comes through crystal clear: Hollywood doesn't want Liam Neeson. At least, not the version of himself he's offering. Then comes the turn. A call in the early 80s changes everything. Not for a romantic lead, not for the roles he dreamed about lying awake at night, but for a small part in Excalibur, directed by John Boorman. He plays Sir Gawain, a knight of the Round Table. The film becomes a cult classic. Suddenly, Hollywood starts paying attention. But success doesn't come flooding in like he imagined it would. For the next decade, Neeson grinds. He takes supporting roles, character parts, anything to stay relevant in an industry that chews up and spits out actors every single day. Films like The Bounty, The Mission, Suspect. He works alongside stars like Mel Gibson and Robert De Niro, but remains firmly in their shadows. still waiting for his moment, still believing it will come. Then Darkman arrives. Directed by Sam Raimi, this superhero film before superhero films dominated everything should have been his breakthrough. Neeson pours everything into it. The intensity, the physicality, the emotional depth he's been cultivating for years. The film performs modestly. Not a blockbuster, not a failure, just modest. Just another credit in a growing list of almosts. This is where most actors surrender. After 15 years of struggle, most would have accepted their fate as a character actor, grateful for steady work. But Liam Neeson wasn't built that way. This was a man who grew up dodging bullets in Belfast, who stepped into boxing rings knowing he might get hurt, who left everything familiar behind to chase an impossible dream. He understood how to take a punch and keep fighting. He just didn't know that his biggest punch was about to come from a place he never expected, his own heart, and it would nearly destroy him. At 41 years old, after 2 decades of grinding, rejection, and near misses, Liam Neeson finally gets the call. Steven Spielberg wants him for Schindler's List to play Oskar Schindler, a film about the Holocaust that will require him to carry the emotional weight of one of history's darkest chapters on his shoulders. A film that could either make or destroy everything he's built. Spielberg saw something in Neeson that countless others had missed. Not just the intensity or physicality, but the humanity. The ability to portray a complex man, neither pure hero nor simple villain, with devastating honesty. Neeson threw himself into the role with everything he had left. Losing weight, studying the history, immersing himself in the pain of that era until it became part of him. When Schindler's List premiered, the world stopped. The film was hailed as a masterpiece, and Liam Neeson earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. At 41, after decades of rejection, after being told repeatedly he'd never make it, he had finally arrived. But success wasn't even the best thing that happened to him during this period. On the set of Anna Christie, he met her, Natasha Richardson, British actress, daughter of legendary Vanessa Redgrave and director Tony Richardson. She was elegant, brilliant, funny, and everything he never thought he deserved. They were cast as lovers on stage, and art quickly became reality in a way that felt almost inevitable. Friends described their relationship as something rare, something genuine in an industry built on facades. Neeson, the rugged Irishman who had spent his life fighting for recognition, had found someone who saw him, not the actor, not the rising star, but the man underneath all of it. They married in the mid-90s. 2 sons followed, Mihal, then Daniel. For the first time in his life, Liam Neeson had it all. The career was soaring. Rob Roy, Michael Collins, Les Miserables, he was working with the best directors, finally playing the complex leading roles he dreamed about. But more importantly, he had love. Real, profound, transformative love. He had a family. He had stability. He had happiness that felt earned after so much struggle. In interviews from this period, there's a lightness in his eyes that wasn't there before. He talks about his sons with the wonder of a man who can't believe his good fortune. He talks about Natasha like she's the answer to questions he didn't know how to ask. Away from cameras, he was simply dad. Building Lego with his boys, reading bedtime stories, living the life he never dared dream was possible. Natasha didn't just love Liam, she anchored him. In an industry built on ego and insecurity, she kept him grounded, made him laugh, challenged him to be better. She was his home, and for 15 years, that home was everything. But here's the truth about happiness that nobody wants to acknowledge. The brighter it burns, the darker the shadow it casts. And the shadow coming for Liam Neeson would eclipse everything he'd ever known about pain. March 16th, Mont-Tremblant, Quebec, Canada. Natasha Richardson, age 45, is on a ski vacation. It's supposed to be relaxing, fun, a break from their busy lives. She's taking a beginner's lesson on an easy slope. Nothing dangerous, nothing extreme, just a simple ski lesson on a mountain she's been to before. She falls. Not a dramatic crash, not a high-speed collision. Just a simple fall that happens to beginners everywhere, every single day. She gets up, laughing about it, telling instructors she's perfectly fine, no helmet, no visible injury, no blood, just a bump. She refuses medical attention, signs a waiver, and goes back to her hotel room. Everything seems normal. Everything seems fine. An hour passes, then another. Then everything changes in an instant. She begins complaining of a severe headache. Something's wrong. Something's very wrong. By the time she reaches the hospital, doctors deliver a diagnosis that changes everything. Epidural hematoma, bleeding in the brain. The fall had caused a slow bleed, invisible and silent. And by the time symptoms appeared, the damage was already done. Liam Neeson is in Toronto filming Chloe. He gets the call that every spouse fears. At first, it doesn't compute. A skiing accident? But she's okay, right? She has to be okay. People don't just die from beginner slopes. Modern medicine can fix anything. He rushes to the hospital, still believing this is fixable, still believing he'll walk in and she'll smile at him and tell him he worried for nothing. But when he arrives, when he sees her in that hospital bed, when doctors explain the irreversible brain damage, his entire world shatters into pieces he'll never fully put back together. For 2 days, he sits by her bedside, holding her hand that can't squeeze back, talking to her ears that can't hear him, begging her to wake up, knowing she never will. His sons fly in, Mihal, 13 years old, Daniel, 12. They say goodbye to their mother. How do you explain to children that their mother, who was healthy and laughing just days ago, is gone? How do you make sense of something so senseless? How do you answer questions that have no good answers? On March 18th, Liam Neeson makes the decision no one should ever have to make. He removes Natasha from life support. But true to her spirit, true to the woman who spent her life giving to others, her organs are donated, saving 3 lives. Even in death, she gave everything she had. The funeral is held in upstate New York, a private ceremony for family and close friends. But the grief is public. The world mourns with him. And in those early days, weeks, and months after her death, Liam Neeson disappears from public view. He doesn't give interviews. He doesn't make statements. He simply tries to survive each day, each hour, each breath. Friends later reveal that he nearly broke completely. The man who had played warriors, survivors, and heroes on screen felt like he was drowning on dry land. He drank heavily to numb the pain. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He would walk into rooms and forget why he was there. The simplest tasks became impossible mountains to climb. Getting his sons to school, making breakfast, existing without her. But here's what saved him from going completely over the edge. Those 2 boys, Michal and Daniel, needed their father. They had lost their mother. They couldn't lose him too. And so, in the darkest moment of his life, Liam Neeson made a choice. Not an easy choice, not a simple choice, but the only choice he could live with. He decided to keep going. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. 3 months after burying his wife, Liam Neeson does something that shocks everyone who knows him. He goes back to work. Not because he's healed, not because the pain has subsided, but because sitting at home, drowning in memories and grief, isn't helping his sons. It isn't honoring Natasha's memory. So he returns to the one thing he's always known, acting, the one escape that saved him as a boy in Belfast. But something fundamental has changed. The roles he chooses now are different. Gone are the period dramas and thoughtful character studies. Instead, he gravitates towards something raw, something physical, something that lets him channel his rage and pain into something productive. Action films, and not just any action films, films where he plays men who have lost everything and are fighting desperately to survive. Taken had been filmed before Natasha's death but released after. And suddenly, a film that was supposed to be a modest thriller becomes a cultural phenomenon. Audiences connect with something in Neeson's performance they can't quite name but can absolutely feel. That line, "I will find you and I will kill you," delivered with such cold, controlled fury, resonates on a deeper level because it's real. That's not just acting. That's a man who understands what it means to lose everything and fight with everything remaining to protect what's left. The success of Taken transforms his career yet again. At 56, an age when most actors are winding down, Liam Neeson becomes an unlikely action star. Unknown. The gray, non-stop, run all night. He makes film after film, each one allowing him to punch, fight, and struggle his way through grief that has no other outlet. But here's what most people don't see behind the box office numbers. Those action films are therapy. Every punch he throws is anger at the universe for taking his wife. Every desperate run through danger is his attempt to outrun grief that follows him everywhere. Every character who refuses to give up is Liam Neeson refusing to give up on life, on his sons, on himself, even when every fiber of his being wants to surrender. In rare interviews during this period, he's brutally honest about his struggle in ways most celebrities never are. He talks about the drinking, about the depression that felt like drowning, about sitting in Natasha's closet, surrounded by her clothes, just trying to feel close to her again. He talks about the guilt, survivor's guilt, father's guilt, the guilt of sometimes going hours without thinking about her and then hating himself for those stolen moments of peace. But he also talks about his sons, how Michal changed his last name to Richardson to honor his mother, how Daniel found his own path through art and activism, how they held each other up when everything felt like it was falling apart, how they learned to laugh again, slowly, painfully, but genuinely. How they became more than just father and sons, they became survivors together, bound by shared loss that nobody outside that bond could truly understand. And he talks about Natasha not with bitterness at the cosmic unfairness of it all, but with love, pure, enduring, undiminished love. He speaks about her in the present tense sometimes, as if she's still with him, because in the ways that truly matter, she is. She's in every decision he makes, every role he chooses, every moment with his sons. She's woven into the fabric of who he is now. Today, at 72 years old, Liam Neeson is still working, still creating, still showing up. But he's also something more profound than just an actor. He's a survivor. Not in the Hollywood sense of surviving scandal or career setbacks, but in the truest, rawest sense, surviving the loss that nearly destroyed him and finding a way to not just exist, but to keep living fully. He's become an advocate in ways he never planned. He speaks openly about grief, about loss, about the crushing weight of depression and the importance of mental health. He breaks the stereotype of the stoic, silent man who can't express emotion. He shows other men, other fathers, other widowers, that it's not just okay to fall apart, it's human. That it's okay to ask for help. That surviving doesn't mean forgetting or moving on, it means learning to carry the weight and still move forward one step at a time. His relationship with his sons has deepened in ways tragedy often forces. They're not just father and children anymore, they're survivors together, a unit forged in shared loss that outsiders can't fully comprehend. Michal has followed his parents into acting, carrying on the family legacy. Daniel has pursued music and environmental activism, finding his own voice. And Liam watches them with pride that's forever tinged with the bittersweet knowledge that Natasha should be here to see them become the men they are. He's found new purpose beyond film. He supports causes close to Natasha's heart, children's hospitals, AIDS research, gun control advocacy. After Natasha's death from a head injury, he became a vocal supporter of helmet safety for skiers. Not bitter advocacy driven by anger, but gentle, persistent reminders that simple precautions can save lives, that what happened to him doesn't have to happen to others. And here's perhaps the most remarkable thing about Liam Neeson's journey. He hasn't let tragedy define him completely. Yes, it changed him. Yes, it marked him forever. But when you look at his life as a whole, from the streets of Ballymena to the heights of Hollywood, you don't just see loss, you see resilience. You see a man who kept showing up, kept fighting, kept loving, even when love brought unbearable pain. You see someone who understands that the alternative to feeling pain is feeling nothing at all, and that's not living, that's just existing. The story of Liam Neeson isn't a Hollywood fairy tale with a neat ending where everything works out perfectly. There's no moment when the music swells and all the pain disappears. Because real life doesn't work that way. Real life is messy and brutal and unfair in ways that no script would dare to write. Real life takes away the people we love most when we least expect it, without warning, without reason, without mercy. Real life asks us impossible questions. How do you keep going when everything inside you wants to stop? How do you be strong for others when you feel completely shattered? How do you find meaning in a world that can be so devastatingly cruel? Liam Neeson doesn't have all the answers. Nobody does. But he has something more valuable than answers. He has his truth. The truth that grief doesn't disappear, it just becomes part of who you are. Like scar tissue that marks where you were wounded, but also shows you survived. The truth that loving deeply means risking devastating loss. And it's still worth it, every single time. The truth that strength isn't about never falling apart, it's about putting yourself back together, piece by painful piece, and choosing to keep living when everything tells you to give up. When you watch a Liam Neeson film now, you're not just watching an actor playing a role. You're watching a man who has stared into the abyss, felt its pull, and somehow found the strength to step back from the edge. You're watching someone who understands that life's most powerful performances aren't on screen. They're in the quiet moments of choosing hope over despair, love over bitterness, life over the easy escape of giving up. From the boy in Belfast who learned to fight, to the struggling actor who refused to quit, to the husband who found perfect love, to the widower who survived unimaginable loss, to the father who kept his family together, to the man who keeps showing up every single day, this is Liam Neeson. Not a hero, not a myth, just a man. A beautifully, powerfully, inspiringly human man who proves that our struggles don't disqualify us from greatness, they're often what make us great. Our scars don't make us broken, they prove we survived. Our pain, as unbearable as it sometimes feels, can be transformed into something meaningful if we're brave enough to keep going. That's the legacy of Liam Neeson. Not the films, not the awards, not the fame, but the proof that we can lose everything and still find reasons to keep fighting. If this story moved you, if it changed how you see struggle and survival, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more stories about the real people behind the icons we think we know. Drop a comment below telling us about a moment when you had to keep going despite everything telling you to stop. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to not be okay. That survival isn't about being strong every moment, it's about being strong enough to take the next step. And most importantly, if you're fighting your own battle right now, remember, you're not alone. The man who became an action hero at 56 is proof that it's never too late to write a new chapter, that loss doesn't have to be the end of your story, it can be the beginning of a different one. Thank you for watching, and remember, keep fighting.